Akshaya Kumar is the Director of Crisis Advocacy at Human Rights Watch, and she now joins us via Zoom from New York. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As you can imagine, Israel is fighting back, saying that using the words apartheid in relation to its country is unfair and unfounded. How is it that you're able to use this word, apartheid, in the context of Israel and its treatment of Palestinians?
Well, absolutely. We as a human rights organization do our work based on international law. And so although the term apartheid originated in South Africa and a very particular context, historic context now, it has been codified into treaties, including the Apartheid Convention and the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. And so we're not using this term as a slur, we're not using it as a comparison. We are doing a very clinical, careful legal analysis. And what we found is that we cannot deny that when the facts are applied to the law, we have the conclusion that this crime is being committed by Israeli authorities. And it's time to stop turning our eyes away from that.
So typically, what are those things that Palestinians suffer just because they're Palestinian? Because that is what apartheid really looks at, isn't it? It's a subjugation of other people based on their race or ethnicity.
That's right. And that's the kind of thing that we looked at Human Rights Watch. We looked for a system of systematic oppression with an intent to dominate or discriminate by one group against the other. And that's what we found here. There are numerous examples in our report, but I'll walk you through a few. Settlers in the West Bank can fill swimming pools with subsidized water, while Palestinians who live just blocks away have to queue up for their ability to get any water at all from the municipality. In the context of coronavirus, COVID-19 vaccines are available to Jewish Israelis. They're available to Arabs who live inside Israel, but those who live in the occupied territories, Arab Palestinians, have not been able to access these vaccines, even though Israel controls the territory and controls what goes in and out of a place like Gaza. Finally, and this is really important, the Israeli state has confiscated over 2,000 square kilometers of land from Palestinians. And in the period between, for example, 2016 to 2018, they issued more and more orders for housing demolitions than any permits for building. And so you see the situation of a community being constrained, restricted, prevented at every turn, whether it's residency permits or the decision to choose where to live, the ability to drive on the same roads, or to marry who they would like. And this is really why we find it rises to that same level, to the crime of apartheid.
And also, I guess, the right to return is another one, isn't it? If you're Jewish and you want to come back to Israel, you're welcomed with open arms by virtue of the fact that you're Jewish. But Palestinians don't have the same right, and you've got millions of Palestinians living outside of their country.
True. And this even extends to the case of Palestinians who, for example, might have been born in Jerusalem, go abroad to study, and then are at risk of losing their Jerusalem residency. There is almost a systematic attempt to constrain and limit the number of Palestinians, Arab Palestinians, who have residency. And this isn't just coincidental. We also have documented and collected in our report statements of intent, statements that say things like the Palestinians will remain our subjects, or we intend to Judaize the Galilee. And so these actions then have to be read in light of what the leaders themselves are expressing as their goals and objectives.
But Tel Aviv will say all the actions that Israel has taken have been about security, and they are based on areas of vulnerability.
Yes, So we understand that a security argument has been popular, but what our report seeks to do is to go directly and address that argument. And fundamentally, international human rights law is very clear in the ways in which a security threat can, in some circumstances, excuse some restrictions on rights, but it cannot excuse the crime of humanity of apartheid. And so in that case, when you look at international law, this idea that a security justification eliminates responsibility for this as a crime just doesn't water from a legal perspective.
So what should be done then? I mean, if we know that crimes against humanity are being committed, should Israel be referred to the ICC?
Well, in fact, the ICC does have jurisdiction over this situation because the Palestinians who have joined the court and they've joined the Rome Statute have referred the situation themselves. A few weeks back, the court's trial chamber that does have jurisdiction to look into crimes that take place, especially in the occupied Palestinian territories. And so we do have a link to bring this issue before the court. So now we have a court and we have a crime, but what we need to do is have the prosecutor there identify who the perpetrators are, so that case files can be built. And that's what we are asking to happen next.